My name is Clara, and I never thought a single dollar bill would save my life. Or rather, that it would teach me how to save my own. My purse held three things: my last $20 bill, a crumpled receipt, and a photograph of my daughter. I stood in the bustling, overlit atrium of the Maplewood Mall, a monument to cheerful consumption, and I felt like a ghost. The receipt was from the pharmacy, for medication I could no longer afford. The photograph was of Leela, smiling with her missing front tooth, a year ago now, before the layoff, before the eviction, before the numb, grinding terror had set in. And the 20 was a lie I was telling myself. It was fuel to get the car, an old Corolla that coughed like a sick animal, to a job interview I was already certain I wouldn't get. It was the thin, green line between me and utter, screaming despair. I clutched the purse to my side, like it was my last life raft, and I focused on the polished floor tiles, counting my steps toward the food court. 1, 2, 3, where the smell of cheap grease and cinnamon sugar felt like a taunt. A small, faithless prayer rattled in my chest. Just let me get through today. Just let me hold it together. The noise of the food court was a physical assault. Families laughed over pizza. Teenagers shared massive sodas. And the world moved in a blur of normalcy I could no longer touch. I found an empty table in a corner, its surface sticky with spilled soda. My plan was pathetic: to sit until my interview time, to pretend I had a purpose. I set my purse down and took out Leela's picture, propping it against a napkin dispenser. Her smile was my anchor, the only thing that kept the cold fear from flooding in completely. That's when I saw him. An older man, maybe in his late 70s, was slowly wiping down tables a few yards away. He wore a faded maroon apron over a plaid shirt, his movements deliberate but pained, a slight wince tightening his face every time he leaned over. His name tag, crooked, read RTHR. He wasn't just cleaning. He was collecting the forgotten trays, stacking them with a quiet diligence that felt out of place in the chaos. My eyes drifted from Arthur to a table he hadn't reached yet. A young family had just left, and in their wake was a half-eaten plate of French fries and a full, towering cup of soda, the straw still unwrapped. A waste. A stupid, casual waste. And something in me, the part that calculated the cost of a single banana, the part that knew how many meals that soda could have been for Leela and me, snapped. A hot, shameful tear escaped before I could stop it. I swiped at it angrily, looking down, begging the emotion to recede. When I looked up, Arthur was at that table. He didn't dump the soda. He looked around, almost furtively, then carefully placed the straw in his apron pocket. He picked up the cup, and with his back mostly to the crowd, he took a long, slow drink. It wasn't greed. It was relief. The kind of relief you feel when you find a forgotten bottle of water on a scorching hike. He finished, his shoulders slumping for a second, before squaring them again to resume his work. The sight unmoored me. My own problems were a hurricane, but in that moment, I saw his, quiet, dignified, thirsty. My hand went into my purse. My fingers closed around the $20 bill. It was insanity. It was my gas money, my pretend stability. But a voice, small and clear, the one I hadn't heard in months, whispered, "Look, Before I could think, I was walking toward him. He turned as I approached, his eyes a pale, weary blue. "Excuse me, sir," I said, my voice trembling. I couldn't help but notice. "Get yourself a proper meal." And I held out the 20. Arthur stared at the bill, then at my face, which I'm sure was streaked with the evidence of my own struggle. He didn't take it. Instead, he shook his head, a sad, gentle smile on his lips. "Oh, no, I couldn't." His voice was gravelly but soft. "You keep that." The rejection should have made me shrink back, but his eyes held mine. They held a knowing, a shared language of hardship that needed no words. "Let me get you a coffee," he said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "You look like you could use a sit down and a chat." He led me, stunned, to a quieter booth near the shuttered pretzel stand. He returned with 2 coffees, paid for with a few wrinkled singles from his own pocket. He slid one across to me. "My name's Arthur," he said, and then he began to talk. He told me about his wife, Eleanor, who was in a memory care facility, the light of his life, who some days didn't remember his name. His pension and social security just barely covered her care. He worked here, not because he had to for the money, though he did, but because the silence of his empty house was a prison. "Here," he said, gesturing around, "I see life. I hear kids. It keeps the loneliness at bay." He worked to stay busy, to feel useful, and to scrape together a little extra for the small things that brought Eleanor comfort. A new soft, bristled hairbrush, her favorite lavender-scented lotion. I found myself talking too. The words tumbled out. The job loss, the fear of losing Leela, the shame of feeling like a failure, the photograph in my purse. I showed him Leela's picture. His rough, spotted finger gently touched the edge of the photo. "She has your smile," he said quietly. "You're carrying a heavy load, Clara. But you're not alone in carrying it." He didn't offer platitudes or empty promises. He just witnessed me. He saw my struggle and validated it. He told me, faith isn't about believing everything will be easy. It's about believing you're strong enough to walk through the hard things. And that sometimes strength comes from letting someone see you stumble. We talked for 20 minutes. It was the most human connection I'd felt in a year. As I got up to leave for my interview, my heart felt lighter, not because my circumstances changed, but because I felt seen. I tried once more to press the 20 into his hand. "Please, Arthur, for Eleanor." He closed my fingers back around the bill, his hands warm and steady. "You hold on to that," he said firmly. "You use it to get to where you need to go. That's how you honor this." He tapped his chest, over his heart. "No, go show them who you are." I went to the interview. I didn't get the job, but something had shifted. Arthur's quiet dignity, his selfless act of buying me coffee when he had so little, had lit a tiny, stubborn flame in my chest. On the drive home, I stopped at a grocery store. With my 20, I bought a loaf of bread, some peanut butter, jelly, and a bag of apples. It wasn't much, but it was food. That night, as I made sandwiches for Leela and me, I remembered the straw in Arthur's pocket. A simple, thirst-quenching kindness. The next Saturday, Leela and I went back to the mall. I had $10 left from a temporary freelance proofreading gig I'd scraped together online. We went to the discount store and bought a reusable water bottle, a soft new blanket, and a large bottle of lavender scented lotion. We made a card. Leela drew a picture of a man and a woman holding hands under a big sun. We asked for Arthur at the food court information desk. The young girl there looked puzzled. Arthur. Oh, you mean Art. The older guy who cleans. He doesn't work Saturdays. He's only here weekdays. Opens up. She gave us the name of the contracting company that handled the mall's maintenance. It took some asking, some phone calls on a borrowed cell phone, but I got an address. It was a small, well-kept house on the older side of town. Leela held the gift bag as I knocked on the door. Arthur answered, his eyes widening in surprise, then crinkling into a smile that reached those tired blue eyes. Clara, he breathed. And then he saw Leela. And you must be the famous artist, he said, bending down a little. Leela, shy, held out the bag. These are for you and Eleanor, she said softly. Arthur's hands trembled as he took it. He invited us in for a moment. The house was sparse, but tidy, filled with photographs of him and a lovely woman with kind eyes. Through decades of laughter and life. He showed us one of Eleanor from their wedding day. She'd love this, he said, his voice thick, holding the lavender lotion. But he was looking at me, and I knew he wasn't just thanking me for the gifts. That was the first visit of many. Arthur became our family. I found more freelance work. Then a part-time job with a kind boss who valued reliability over a perfect resume. Leela and I moved into a small apartment. Every Thursday, we'd have Arthur over for dinner. He'd tell Leela stories, and she'd climb into his lap with a book. Some Sundays, we'd visit Eleanor with him. She didn't always know who we were, but she loved the feeling of the soft blanket, the scent of the lotion as Arthur gently rubbed it onto her hands. He'd hold her hand and tell her about his day, his voice a steady, loving anchor in her fading world. I kept that original $20 bill. I had it framed, behind glass, with a small engraved plaque at the bottom that reads, "The currency of connection." It hangs in my kitchen. I don't see a piece of money when I look at it. I see the moment my own poverty, of spirit, of hope, met a deeper kind of wealth. Arthur taught me that the most profound act of faith isn't a grand gesture. It's the courage to see someone else's need when you are drowning in your own. He took my offered charity and, with a simple cup of coffee, transformed it into mutual compassion. That $20 was never meant to be spent. It was meant to be seen. A mirror held up to my own humanity, and a window into his. The greatest kindness we can often offer is to receive another's with grace, for in that exchange, dignity is preserved. Hearts are fortified, and we are reminded that we are never truly alone in the struggle. We are all just people in the mall of life. Sometimes with very little in our purses, but always with something to give. Even if it's only our attention, our understanding, and a shared cup of coffee,